Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming by. So obviously to our business, you're most widely known for your role at the CFDAs. What led to the moment where you kind of came into the industry of fashion?
Well, I didn't plan to work in fashion. Most of the people I know who work in the industry actually had that as a goal from actually a very young age. But for me, my interest was always working in not-for-profit, working around issues that impacted life and helped people. And I had been working for a group called DIFFA, which is the Design Industries Foundation Fighting AIDS, for a very long time. Had left there and was working for MTV International in social marketing, helping them organize HIV and AIDS programming. And the CFDA reached out to me to come and interview. I knew the CFDA because I had done some project work, and they were looking to hire someone. At the time, it was the executive director, and I didn't really care. It's like, I love my job at MTV, but I'll go on the interview. Didn't overthink about it, didn't overdress, didn't overplan, and there was designers, Diane von Furstenberg being one of them, on the selection committee, and they asked me a bunch of questions. And the last question they asked me was what sign I was. They all had their notebooks open, and I said, I'm a Libra, and they all closed their notebooks and said, thank you very much. And so maybe because I'm a Libra, but no, not really. I think what it was that people that were applying for the job were fashion publicists, fashion merchandisers, people who really worked in fashion. Mm-hmm. That wasn't my skill set. I was a not-for-profit manager, executive, fundraiser, and CFDA is a not-for-profit. So they really wanted someone to come in and run it like a not-for-profit organization. So that's what distinguished me. What we believe at the CFDA is that every brand should do what's best for them. And when I say that, sometimes people look at me quizzically because they think that doesn't really mean anything or that it's a cop-out, but it really does mean something. It means that you don't have to do it the way someone did it 20 years ago. Some designers, Tommy Hilfiger is the best example, don't show seasonal collections 6 months prior during Fashion Week. They're actually showing clothes that on the runway that you can buy in the store right away. That's doing it what's best for him. Other designers like Wang is a good example, have abandoned the February and the September dates. And
he's showing in June, right?
He's showing in June, which is the pre-collection calendar. So that's usually when you're showing resort. So he's combining his September show, not doing a show in September, that collection, which is his main spring collection, with his resort collection, not calling it any seasonal name. He's just got his June show, and he'll show that and have multiple deliveries in that, which actually from a business perspective is smart because the clothes will deliver earlier to the store. That means they'll stay longer full price on the floor, and it also will give him a gap period to kind of step away and rejuvenate and take care of himself.
And you had mentioned at the beginning of that answer that you find fashion as industry has stagnated in a lot of different ways. What did you mean by stagnated, just in terms of the business format or model?
I feel sometimes we don't, the world is changing, mm-hmm. right? Our lives change every day, and we're influenced by so many things that are new and created, and I think we've been slow sometimes to take advantage of those changes, or we see the changes and we see it as a negative versus an opportunity.
What is it that you think has led people like Proenza or Altuzarra to leave New York?
Well, Proenza didn't leave New York because they were disenchanted with New York. Mm-hmm. Proenza left New York because they were doing or did exactly what Alex is doing. They put their pre and their main collection. Mm-hmm. They were the pioneers of the idea and showed it in July. Because Paris has couture shows in July and there's an audience there, they did it in Paris, right? That was the main reason they went to Paris. They were taking that business model of showing earlier and combining the two collections and taking it to a city where there was a captured audience. That decision or any of their decision wasn't negative against New York. It was really a business decision on their part. Joseph, too, he will come back to New York. And look, you have Saint Laurent showing in New York in June. I mean, if New York was such a bad city, why would they come? And I obviously am working at the Council of Fashion Designers of America, so I'm a bit biased in terms of like the value of New York and the importance of New York. But New York is still an incredibly vibrant city, and probably one that of all the 4 global fashion capitals is most likely to have designers experimenting with ideas and formats.
So then what do you feel when someone from Europe claims that New York is the most commercial of the fashion weeks?
Yeah, okay, that's fine with me. I mean, what's wrong with commercial? Commercial's not a dirty word. Nothing wrong with commercial. I will challenge any designer to say, we don't want to sell clothes. Oh, we don't want to sell clothes. We don't want to be commercial. We're artists. Well, then be an artist. Create and hang clothes in a closet and let people come and buy a ticket and look at the clothes of the closet, right? Commercial is what it's about. Commercial, and we are a very entrepreneurial country. We're about making money in this country, so I celebrate commercial. But being a commercial country or being identified as commercial doesn't mean we're not creative. It just means we really recognize and we drive it and we push it as a business.
I mean, obviously we're living in a time with a very sort of charged energy around the conversation with the well-being of people in our business, and the CFDAs were one of the first organizations to be quite proactive in that space and just really addressing those issues. What stimulated those actions for you guys?
You know, fashion is often perceived as superficial or without depth, and it's actually, I found, to be the opposite. So I think creative people, people in the fashion industry are very compassionate. I think there's a lot of humanity in how people interact with each other. So we started about 10 years, something called the CFDA Health Initiative. Really how that started was a model in Europe who died from an eating disorder. And that was disturbing to the industry. And we put together a group, a little advisory group, an editor. We had a medical doctor who was an expert in eating disorders, a nutritionist, a workout, what do you call them, a trainer, a designer, agency people. And through that group, we came up with guidelines. We called it the CFDA Health Initiative that we have since been issuing around casting time each season. With Beth Ann Hardison, we started to focus on diversity, making sure that the runway reflected this country so that people seeing models on the runway saw themselves there and had great success with more diversity on the runway. Just this year, we changed the CFDA Health Initiative. It's now called the Initiative for Health, Safety, and Diversity. The health and the diversity are the same, but we put in safety there. And that's really a reaction and a response to the Me Too movement and a lot of the really awful press that we've read, the stories we've heard about models with photographers, casting people, executives, so that there is a safety message built into what is acceptable in a work environment and how one can protect themselves. And that's something we're very committed to and will evolve more. The other thing that we've done, last year we worked with, just in terms of like messaging and social responsibility, we partnered with Planned Parenthood and ACLU during Fashion Week. We've been working on a big immigration study. We've already issued phase 1 of it. We're about to issue phase 2, looking at the influence of immigration change that's coming out of Washington, DACA particularly, and how that's impacting our industry, an industry that's really been built on immigrant and relies on immigrants. So really focused on immigration reform. And just in a few weeks, we'll be releasing a big study we did with Glamour magazine on women in fashion. We surveyed a very large sample of our industry to look at the equality or lack thereof of women in our industry, and releasing that data and also creating recommendations and steps for us to correct those inequalities. So these kind of issues really matter to the industry, and as an organization that represents the industry, we really take the lead and put a voice behind those issues. You know, it's just a matter of people taking responsibility, and when there's no responsibility being taken, in a particular instance, pointing it out to someone, and often that responsibility is then taken.
And how does an organization like CFDA's, now that you guys are including diversity within the list of topics that the initiative really tackles, how do you stimulate improvement in that area with designers and shows? What's those?
And I think that Beth Ann and others have really drove that as something that's important, and I think that designers have just in many ways taken that on as something that's important to them. We believe very much in an industry that is inclusive and diverse, not just on the runway, but in jobs, whether that be design jobs and executive jobs. And we've done a number of things over the years. Just last Fashion Week, we partnered with Google, and we had a big panel discussion on diversity in fashion. We've had a number of other smaller panel discussions with groups. So we are constantly bringing thought leaders into conversation that are sharing experiences and sharing ideas, and that's really where the designer or the industry is getting ideas and action from.
It's incredible. Well, thank you for all the amazing work that you guys have done and taking the time to come and talk to us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks.